Imagination Education, the podcast, starring Lucy Stuteley and Sarah Stuteley. Welcome to Imagination Education, a podcast about the imagination and the importance of developing creativity to encourage innovation, self-belief and well-being. My name is Lucy Stuteley. I'm an artist, writer, illustrator, and I've started Imagination Education. Today, I want to introduce my co-host for the podcast, the most creative, insightful, and emotionally intelligent woman. When you meet Sarah, who I thank my lucky stars just happens to be my mum and my best friend, you can't help but feel both relaxed and happy. She's renowned for putting those around her at ease, and as a testament to her character, she's manifested a warmth where you cannot walk down the street without someone stopping for a chat and a catch-up. She will be an excellent host, and I'm excited to watch her share this magic with you all. She is an artist in her own right and a skill painter, but her creativity comes through in everything she touches. Not just her art, but the way she decorates her home, the games she's invented for myself and my brother and the grandchildren, just all sorts of things. The eyes in which you see the world are forever magical, and I want to thank you for igniting my creativity and allowing me to grow my imagination education as a child and as an adult. Together, I hope we can shine a light on the importance of imagination education.
You're very welcome, darling.
So yeah, this is Sarah, and I'm Lucy,
Hello.
mother and daughter. The importance of an imagination education. So when did you realise that you were a creative person? Was it at school? Was it before school? Was it when you chose your uni choices?
No, I think it was probably at school because I used to love my art classes at school. I wasn't particularly academic. I enjoyed sports, but art was where I really enjoyed my time at school. And it was a way of, it was an outlet of being able to express myself and explore things and just use my imagination and take things on different journeys.
Yeah.
So I would say I was probably at school when I sort of realised that the world can be a different world in my head.
Yeah.
And when I was a child, I could dream at night and then go back the next night and start that dream up again and carry it on. And my mind was always talking to itself and thinking about things and seeing things, and you know,
in your own little world, sort of thing.
And I think the brain is like a massive library of filing cabinets, and you go to bed and I think all the files fly out and different ones form a dream.
Yeah.
And you can tail that back to maybe seeing something that day on the television, or somebody said something to you, and all of these things come together. So I'm a very observational person.
Yeah.
That's how I remember things.
Yeah. But I find that I think your imagination's almost sort of let loose at night time. You're sort of in a well, you're in a fixed state, aren't you? You don't have any control over it, and it just sort of goes wild. Like I suffer with nightmare, not suffer, but I have nightmares, which actually I found quite creative, stimulating creatively, because I wake up and I think, oh, I must draw what I've just seen, or all sorts of things like that. And it's always sort of, I think if we can get someone on the podcast psychologically to do with dreams, I think that'd be really fascinating in the imagination, because that is one place where it's sort of feral and can just run wild. But in the daytime, I think your creativity, it's quite hard to get you to sit down and draw and paint. When you do, it's amazing and you love it, but I think you almost feel you don't have time for it because there's chores to be done, there's things to be done, and it's allocating that time.
There's life to be done, and I think also I see it as a total absorption, total relaxation. And so, 9 to 5, I feel that it has to wait till I can do it at the weekend or in the evening or whatever. And obviously we have a lot going on with grandchildren and family who all live close, which is wonderful. But there are different times when I sit with the grandchildren and we do things, we make things and discuss things, read books, and go on these little chats about like all the toys coming alive, and
well, that's it, isn't it?
Different things which they absolutely love. They soak it up.
It's imagination in growing up and having and parenting and grandparenting, and what they see on the telly. It's like say discussing it, and then we play games with them like shops, which used to play with us. And Dad again is incredibly creative, and he builds like proper little shops, and we all have to queue up and buy.
And that's so important. It's much more important, because I think in today's society, you know, it's very easy to use technology because we have to be up on it. It's all changing all the
Mhm.
time. But equally, the valued skills of just being able to, I don't know, make a house out of a big box, cardboard
Mhm.
box, and get all the toys out and have a teddy bear's picnic, you know, whatever it is,
Mm.
all of those things are very valuable.
Yeah.
And it does expand children's mind.
Well, in a world where AI is becoming the norm, and we have to sort of go with that and grow with that, I think it's so important now more than ever that we have to make sure we do have imagination educations, so that we do grow that sort of free play type of thing, and
Yeah.
because that encourages people to think for themselves, which means that they can then make decisions in their life further down the line because they're confident in what they actually think about things.
Mm.
And it's innovation. So we don't have inventors, we don't have inventions and new technology without people coming up with ideas.
Mm.
And they come up with ideas because they have an imagination. So it's something we need to really nurture in education and in our jobs and our careers
Yeah.
through our whole life. Actually, I think it's really important because that's how you grow, and that's how we grow as a society and as mankind. It seems like reading books. I think people find a lot of creativity in that because they can have a busy day at work and then they can spend time reading, and that half an hour or whatever it is in the evening, they're in another person's life.
Yeah.
They just step
Yeah.
into somebody else's shoes, and that's reading's meant to be relaxing. It's good for you mentally, and it's good for just growing your vocabulary. It helps you in all sorts of areas, and yet you're on an alien planet fighting an alien war in a book, but really you're learning new words, you're expanding your imagination, and then that might feed into the next day. You might feel a bit more creative, want to cook something new in the kitchen because you're feeling a bit more creative, and it just sort of feeds everything. So
Yeah.
I think it's really important, and that's what I want this podcast to be about. All different types of imagination. We'll get some chefs on, some psychologists. We'll talk about dreams. We'll talk about children's books, which is my passion. Your passion, I would say, is probably art and home decor and things like that, and just sort of see where people's imagination started and how we can kind of keep injecting
And how people use their imagination.
yes, because everyone does it differently.
They do.
Confidence in creativity.
I think a lot of young children too are a bit scared to go very far with imagination in many ways because they're scared they'll get it wrong.
Mm.
And there is no right and wrong.
Mm.
You know, it's just everything a child puts down
Mm.
is new to them,
Mm.
and it's just growing that confidence for them, which is what it is. A lot of it is having the confidence.
That is one of the main things. So I do workshops, I've started doing workshops in schools, and it's about literally giving them the gift of confidence, I suppose, because the mark making, anyone can draw and anyone can write, but it's saying you could do this. Believe in yourself. Self belief is one of the major things that imagination gives you. So if you can't draw an outline of a monkey, but I say, right, okay, do little dashes like the hair, and then or copy mine. Okay, well, why don't you add your own face on it, and then suddenly their confidence blooms, and then they're drawing 6 monkeys and they're really proud of themselves. And that's the other thing about art, I think, is whatever you do, it's an outcome that's produced solely by you, so it's from your brain. So that's why we're fascinated, I think, psychologically with art, because that's come from someone's head and you can't see inside someone's head, and yet you have a painting that they've done and you have a direct window into how they think and what colours they think goes together, and it's something that isn't from you if you're viewing it, and you think, oh, I really get a sense of that person now. And I think, well, it is from you if you're the artist, but it's like it's a bit like bearing your soul, and it's just having the
And it's
confidence.
also knowing that there's no right and there's no wrong.
Yeah.
Everybody's different. In the eye of the beholder with art, some people will love a painting, other people will not. So there is no right and wrong. You can't go.
You can't go wrong.
No, you've just got to have a go and enjoy it. Really, really enjoy it.
But that's things like, pottery classes, and now it's quite popular to do, take a bottle of wine, have a pizza with your friends, and go and do some painting and stuff, and it's quite freeing. And especially
really
when, so in a painting class, you're painting the same thing, and they're talking you through it as you go. You don't have to think, you don't have to worry, because at the end of that class, you're going to have a piece that looks kind of like what the teacher's showing you, so you can let go, and then you go, actually, that's pretty good. I did quite well there. And I think it's just really healthy healthy thing to do. And imagination comes in so many different ways. If people are gamers, for example, if they're gaming, obviously there's a scripted storyline,
Yeah.
but they don't know what that is, and they're trying to say, if I go behind this door, or if I jump off this, what's going to happen, or if I go and speak to that person in the game.
Yeah.
And we crave that because
Yeah.
there's a lot of gamers, and they enjoy that instead of watching telly. If it's storytelling, we love watching telly, we love our films,
Yeah.
filmmaking. You want to be enthralled by a story, and that all comes from imagination. Yes, it comes from real experiences, but someone's acting it, they've got to have imagination to be an actor.
Yeah.
I think it's such an interesting topic, and we can go so far with it with this podcast, hopefully.
Definitely.
If people listen.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
I think we're obviously mother and daughter, and this is slightly difficult for us because we'd be fine talking to somebody else and we bounce off each other because I am a carbon copy of you, but talking to each other we get a bit shy, I think, and a bit insecure. But if somebody else is here and we're talking to them having a coffee, I think it's going to go well. I hope it's going to go well.
Yeah, of course it will.
But we'll see.
It will definitely go well.
But going back to you, so when we were at school, I remember you might go off and you give yourself allocated time because you had friends at school, parents, and who also enjoyed art, and you'd do classes together, and you actually allocated proper time for it. But I remember growing up, one of your lessons was to paint. It was like a knobbly, gnarly piece of wood on a table.
Yeah.
And you came home with a sort of a dragon kingdom. Don't know how to...
Well, it was like a stump, a piece of wood, and it had all these pieces of wood coming out in different shapes and forms. And as I started to do the base of the watercolor, it just, sometimes it's nice to make something interesting. I like to see things that are interesting, and also to take somebody on a journey, to make them think about what they're looking at. So like for this wood, I could see different shapes in this wood, and I started bringing out this dragon's head, and then on the side there was this long piece of wood which had knobbly bits on the ends, and that became a dragon's foot with nails and claws and things like that. And then there was obviously some eggs that appeared out of nowhere, and it was just creating this piece of a story, really, an imaginative story. It wasn't just a piece of wood because it was so full of shape and interest, and it just developed, and I just kept going at it, and in the end, it came out, and a lot of people might think it's a bit odd.
No.
But it is imagination.
But I think that's
different.
I think that proves that I do think you're incredibly creative, like all around. Like I said to you, I think it seeps out in the way you decorate each room of your house, in the cooking, everything. It comes out. It's like you can't contain it, and you don't have to be sitting down with a paintbrush and a pen to be creative. Your gardening, your flower beds, all those things, so creative. And I think that was almost like you went to a lesson. You were told, right, here are the boundaries. Here's a stump of wood. Paint the stump of wood. And you couldn't contain it. Your personality, your character just seeped out, and your imagination could not draw that piece of wood.
No, well, I think everybody has to go their own way.
Yeah.
Whatever that may be.
Yeah. But I just think that again is an insight into you as a person. I think it's really important that we nurture that in ourselves. And it allows us to be brave. Like doing this podcast is quite brave.
Very brave.
Very brave. Not sure about being seen by people you don't know, but we're all up for making friends. But I think it's really important to shine a light on imagination in a world where technology is really fast, moving really fast, and we can be a bit lazy. We don't have to make things nowadays. You can press a button and it's done for you.
Yeah.
And we're forgetting the sort of joy in things like, so my partner's currently gardening in the garden right now.
Yeah.
And that's a relaxing hobby. It's a creative hobby. He's deciding where everything's going. The tomatoes are going here, the beetroots are going here, and that will be restorative. And he'll come home and he'll be tired, and he'll be wholesome. He'll be happy, and he can rest because he's achieved something today.
Well, this is it, and I think every person, every day, at the end of the day, when they go to bed, whatever their targets were, that achievement makes you feel good. It makes you feel happy.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, whether you've just baked a cake
Yes.
or whether you planted your tomatoes, your onions, your garlics, and whatever, and whatever you've done in that day, you want to do it the best you can and move forward and actually be able to say, "Oh, I did that today. That's good. Oh, I did that."
It's a sense of achievement, and that is so, so important. And it's important outside of work to like wind down and relax, to have a hobby, some sort of creative hobby. If you can do it inside your work, amazing. If you're a chef, if you're a musician, if you're, a children's book writer and illustrator, which I'd love to be, amazing.
You
But
are already.
well, yeah, but if you're not doing that in your 9 to 5, say you have a different type of job, I just think it's absolutely vital to have a wind down thing, whether it's baking a cake and doing the icing or making a lovely meal and sharing it with whoever you live with or family or friends. That is a creative, you can't say it's not great, it's totally creative, isn't it?
Yeah.
And because you might be following a recipe. We were saying this actually earlier today, that when you follow a recipe, if I made a recipe and you made a recipe and it was the same one, it would still taste completely different in a blind tasting. Because you can't not put your you-ness into it, can you? Because it might be that you're used to putting this much salt in, or you're used to putting this much whatever in, or you have a secret ingredient that you like to put in, or a special herb or something. And you can always tell someone's cooking. Like grandma's cooking was always grandma's cooking.
Yeah.
It's always, I can taste it now. I can taste her mashed potatoes now. I can't recreate them, but I could take, if you put some grandma's mashed potatoes in front of me now, they're grandma's.
Yeah.
Because of the way they taste or the ingredients she uses.
Yeah.
And that's an expression of creativity. Feed your imagination. I had loads of books growing up, and for me it was about the illustrations because that's my thing. That's what I love, and obviously the stories as well. But I'd almost prefer, so every night you'd put a tape on for me, an audiobook.
Yeah.
And then I think that's just the most wonderful thing, because having the book as well, you've got the illustrations, which I'm very, very fond of. The sort of mainstream ones like A.A. Milne's, E.H. Shepard's version of A.A. Milne's Winnie the Pooh, just the way they're done. I could eat them. They're just incredible. But the tapes allow your imagination, the audiobooks allow your imagination to conjure up the story.
You have to make that story up in your head.
Yeah, so it's almost like watching a movie in your head. And I'd go to sleep, and then I think that's probably why I'd start having these amazing dreams and things, because you're turning that switch on in your brain, saying, right, close your eyes, conjure up the images in your head, and kind of
I think
make
it's
the world.
Also repetition. It's a comfort to a child.
Massively.
When they go to bed and snuggle down, they've had their story read to them and everything, and it's now time for mum or dad to leave the room. And they snuggle down, and then they have that repetitive voice telling them a story, and they have to listen. They listen to it, and then the mind goes off, and I think it is a comfort as well.
Yeah, massive. Well, I think stories are a comfort. Like, why do we read? We read to sort of wind down. You read when you're on holiday. You don't really go on holiday, do you? But most people go on holiday and they sit by the pool and they read, don't they?
Well, you can learn so much from reading.
Yeah.
People sometimes read books to feed their hunger for history, for instance. They just love history.
Well, I know, like Dad, for example, he loves history, and I think I can imagine him sitting there reading. One of my favourite things about reading, and I can imagine this Dad, he doesn't read very often, but when he does read, he's sitting there, he's reading, you might see a little frown on his face or something, and he's reading a history book. But in his head, there's some sort of battle going on, and people are going through all sorts of things. And yet that person's just sitting there very still, very quiet, and they've got all these things going on, and they're so entertained. And then they sort of come up for air, 20 minutes, an hour later, whatever it is, and they've been somewhere else. It's like, whoa. And it's almost a little respite from your bubble that you live in every day.
Yeah. Well, from the minute you wake up in the morning, your brain is chattering away, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's never silent.
No. Well,
unless you go to sleep.
Unless you can meditate.
Meditation's brilliant.
Yeah. I've never been able to crack that one. Have you ever been able to?
Well, I do yoga, so yoga is fantastic physically and mentally, and for any age group. And a lot of yoga classes will have meditation at the end of the class, and it's fantastic. Just totally pulls you together again, and grounds
do you find it like recharging because you, like me, must be pretty mentally exhausted at the end of the day because your brain is all the time. Do you find things like yoga can quieten or restore that, or sort of like a battery charge for you? Or do you find that when you're meditating at the end, you're conjuring up colours and things? Is it even more creative, or is it kind of restful?
I think it's hugely restful, restorative.
Yeah. Which is another, because life's about balance,
and
isn't
it's
it?
again a skill, learning to meditate, because you have to focus on really listening and letting your body just stop.
Yeah. In summary, so what kind of guests would you like to see on the podcast?
Well, I'm happy to meet anybody at all, and have lots of conversations.
Yeah. I think it's really important, and I think it would be a really good thing to do. Yeah. Hopefully we can do it.
That would be wonderful. Thank you very much.
You could be my co-host.
I've enjoyed it, the first one.
Well, it's just a general overview of what imagination is and why it's important, and it's not just for children, it's for adults as well.
It's for everybody.
It's for everybody, and it does seep into every area of your life, I think, personally, whether it's, like we said, cooking, or what kind of music do you like, or all that sort of thing. And again, music's another really interesting one, because it's sort of, I find, obviously the people that make the music are very creative, but when you listen to music and your mood goes up, like for example, cooking with music is a completely different experience, and it lifts everything. But
well, music can do everything, can't it? Because it can conjure up all sorts of times in your life, sometimes sad, sometimes very, very happy. Sometimes it brings back a holiday or a conversation or something you've seen. I think music is, again, very, very therapeutic. If you're feeling down and you put some music on that you love, it can totally lift your spirit.
It's a link to emotions, isn't it? It's almost like a little key to turn your emotions whatever way you want to.
And it can, music expresses things. You watch like the London shows and that, they come out absolutely buzzing. They're fantastic. You're absorbed by the story that's been told.
I'd love to get some actors from the musical theatre in London. That'd be amazing.
That would be incredible.
Watch this space. But it's things like whatever your hobby is. Like for me, it's drawing and writing. If I'm drawing, it's an audio book or it's music, and I'm in a different world. It takes me a minute to come back down to earth and go, oh, life's still going on. I need to come out.
How wonderful is that you can lose yourself in something?
Yeah, totally. And like I said, if it's reading a book, whatever your hobby is, we should probably sign off now. I don't know how. Thank you to the one or two family members that are watching and listening to this. Maybe we'll get a couple of listeners, and then we can get some more guests on, have a good old chat, maybe with a cup of tea or something.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Look forward to next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening.
Okay.
Bye. Bye. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to this channel for more. Copyright 2024 Lucy Stuteley. Sound credits are listed in the caption.